This is the 22nd season of Bass Talk Live. BTL is presented by Bass Cat Boats, Strike King Lures, AFTCO, Pro Guide Batteries, Spro, Gamakatsu, The Bass Tank, Beatdown Outdoors, and Sunline.
BTL coming at you.
Good morning and welcome to another exciting edition of BTL Bass Talk Live. We have made it through the first month of shows. I was really pumped with how January went for BTL. We had a lot of really good, insightful interviews from Lake Fork Guy, Milliken. We had Drew Gill in studio, Brian Latimer, just all sorts of good stuff that I really enjoyed. Going to kind of keep that heading into the rest of the year, some more kind of long form, really get behind the scenes. But this is Bass Talk Live, and we do cover the wonderful world of professional bass fishing. And starting in just a few short days, we've already knocked out one of the BPTs that was on Lake Guntersville, which was won by Drew Gill, who then was in studio. And then I had him on for 2 hours, and we talked about AI and all sorts of stuff. And I never really asked him about Guntersville. But between that BPT event and what is about to kick off on Thursday, chaos has erupted across the southeast. I would assume. Is Guntersville considered southeast? It's more like northern. But that being said, every Elite Series guy, usually like the trend was for the number of years is like if your boat cover has frost on it, you like write like Elites 2026 and then underline it in the frost on your cover. Now it's guys at the boat ramp going, that looks weird, and it's frozen water. I saw just McCormick dumped in yesterday, 34-degree water temperature. I saw Gussie trying to flip a grass mat, couldn't get his weight through because the grass was frozen. And there's no forward-facing sonar. So one of the beloved BTL regulars, guy that I've known for a long time, industry insider, good angler too, Pete Robbins is going to be at Guntersville later this week, one of the senior writers for Bassmaster, among other things. And I was like, hey, you want to come on and chat about it? It's been a while since you've been on. So the one and only Pete Robbins from the East Coast, soon to be from a frigid Lake Guntersville. Thanks for jumping on BTL, Pete.
Thanks for having me, Matt. It is, as you said, frigid here in Virginia. I think we're supposed to hit 32 degrees today, which is balmy compared to the negative and single-digit temperatures we've had for about 2 weeks. And I was in Chicago. I was in Chicago last week where it was even worse. So I'm going to be thrilled to get to the 50-degree temperatures at Lake Guntersville.
Yeah, it is. I'm really curious as to how much that it'll still be some cold at the night, but it'll get up to where they can actually like fish during the day without the ice in the guides. I'll be curious as to how much that warms the weather. Now, you're a bit of a historian as well, and can think back to some other notable events where cold played a major factor. The one that obviously sticks out to me, I believe it was the 2013 Classic on Grand Lake, the one that Cliff Pace won. They remember they built a new facility there in Grove. And the question was, will the trucks be sliding in the water? Will the lake be iced over? Like, it was ballsy to do a classic that early in northern Oklahoma. And it was cold as hell there, but really no major catastrophes as far as that was concerned. What was the other one that we were talking about?
Hartwell 2015, 7 degrees. Miserable. I remember Randall Tharp telling me, first of all, I think Randall Tharp had like the all-time worst classic that week. His camper froze up, so he was dealing with that. His marshal or driver hit something in the arena. But I remember him telling me he got to his first spot and he knew they were loaded up in there, and he skipped his jig across the water and it just went shooting across a sheet of ice. And that's when he knew it was over. And that's when it played directly into Casey Ashley's hands, obviously.
Yeah, the underspin, the homemade underspin with his dad, 2015. Like, I have only in one time, so I fished the BFLs in 2013, Pete, and we kicked it off on Grand Lake, and it was like in March, and it was the biggest shad kill that I've ever seen in my life. Every single where you stopped on the lake, it was just confetti shad. And I had a place down lake. I had practiced 4 days for that BFL. I had gotten 2 bites, and both of them were on a wiggle wart on one stretch of bank down lake. So I was like, I am just going to slow crank this with a wiggle wart. And I get there, and it is frozen solid. The entire back half of the cove. I cannot even get to the bank that I had caught my 2 fish on. And I did zero that one, but I think it took 2 pounds to get a check. Like, surely by the time the tournament starts on Thursday, there will not be ice anywhere on Guntersville, will there?
I don't think so. But I mean, it kind of doesn't matter at this level. A friend of mine has a saying, when you go out there and you're on one of those days with 8-foot waves and miserable conditions and the lake is turning over and all this stuff is going wrong, his phrase is and I won't use the word, but it's 7 letters and starts with A. Some A always catches them. When you get back to the bag line, people are going to have caught 25 or 30 pounds. It's Guntersville after all, and these guys catch them. It may not go quite as far down the list. The cut weight might be lower, but at the top, I think the weights are still going to be pretty good.
Now, let's just dive right into this. We're going to kind of look over the entire schedule. It wasn't clickbait when I said I think this is the most important season of the Elite Series yet. I think it's the 17th, 18th year of the Elite Series.
No, this is 21, I think.
Of the Elite Series, 2006. Oh my God.
Last year you're getting old, dude.
Yeah, 2006 was the first year of the Elite Series. 16, 26. Yeah, this is like the 20th or 21st year. You're right.
And when you think about it, we're almost at the point. I looked it up this morning. Fisher Anaya was born in November of 2005. So we haven't got to the point where we have an Elite Series pro who wasn't born when Ish won at Amistad, but we're getting really close.
Is this the longest running series, I guess, top of the level series for Bassmaster? Like, it seems like there were between like the E50s and the Invitationals and then the top 150s and then the Bassmaster Tour and all that. Like, you look at from the beginning, like, I don't think any of the quote the highest level it has been around as long as the Elite Series, right? Like, the pinnacle has changed, it seems, every 5 to 10 years up until the Elite Series in 2006.
I think that's right. I wasn't around, obviously, for the 70s, and I wasn't really aware, or I was around, but I wasn't aware of what was going on, or in the early 80s. But I think they did change the names a lot in terms of invitationals and things like that.
But yeah, second half of the show, we're going to get into it. I think with the climate, with what's going on around the professional bass fishing universe, I think the Elite Series has a lot to prove this year. I'm not saying they're playing second fiddle to anybody. I'm just saying we have a new format. We have a split schedule. There's a lot of requested or unrequested, a lot of people that are judging, rooting for or against, to see how it goes down. I'll be very interested to see how the split schedule goes down. So we'll go through all of that. Some interesting questions around the classics, but at the end of last year, they did that coin flip. May the odds be ever in your favor to determine whether you could use forward-facing sonar or not for events. It ended up being split events, and then they flipped for the last one or last two, that St. Lawrence and Champlain deal. Here is where it gets interesting, because I think we were all thinking Guntersville would be an interesting one, but it's Guntersville. And we saw in that Ultimate Anglers Championship, guys still caught him without forward-facing sonar. A quote-unquote scoper and Tucker Smith won $500,000. And you're coming into this first one of the year thinking, oh, yeah, I mean, it's going to be a big difference whether it was forward or was not forward-facing sonar. It was no forward-facing sonar for Guntersville, and then this cold front hit. 30-degree water temps, everything around the bank, frozen. Pete, that was like a huge, I mean, that totally flipped this entire tournament on its head. Would you not agree?
I don't know. I mean, I'm thinking the BPT a couple weeks ago, which obviously was in better conditions, but guys, Jacob Wheeler caught him on a lipless crank. People caught him on crankbaits there. I think it's Guntersville. These guys were catching them really good long before forward-facing sonar ever existed at Guntersville. The lake hasn't gotten any worse. I don't think we're going to see the impacts of no forward-facing sonar at Guntersville the way we would at Champlain, for instance.
Really? See, I totally disagree with you.
Really?
I think with this cold front and the way that Guntersville's fishing and what we saw Drew Gill and Bank Shaw and a couple of the other guys do in the BPT in just a period or two, with that 35 to 42 degree water, I think the entire top 10 would have been minnows, would have been guys that are offshore minnowing blimps. And you won't see that at all here. But I think the entire top 10 would have been guys throwing 4 to 7 inch minnows on Fox Sports on Sunday. And
I guess maybe we're
that.
thinking about it in different ways. You're thinking about it in terms of techniques. I'm thinking about it in terms of the overall catches.
I think there would have been 10 times as many catches with forward facing. I think it's going to be a grind, Pete. I mean, heck, the grass mats are frozen.
I think there are going to be several guys who are going to get on the outside lines of grass mats with the DT6, DT8, chatterbait. Guys are going to get on bridges. Obviously, they can't throw an Alabama rig, but there are plenty of other things, a jig you can throw on a bridge. Mm-hmm. Those fish live there all the time. I think you still have a good chance at a century belt, maybe not as many century belts.
Really?
And I think what's going to happen is the 50th place cut weight may be lower, but you're still, I mean, realistically, when you're watching Fox Sports on Sunday, you're not watching the 50th place guy. You're watching those top 10 who are going to catch them. I mean, we're going to come away from this tournament with a lasting memory of guys who got their dreams dashed because their buddy next to them caught 100 pounds and they caught 28 pounds.
You've covered this a long time. You cover the Elite Series. How important are these first two events to the entire season? It's interesting. We've got 11 or 10 rookies, one returning with Russ Lane. We now know that it does not matter who you are or what your name is. If you are below that cut line, you are going home or headed to the Opens. And it always is crazy, whether we're in Florida, whether it's an East Texas deal, it's an Alabama deal this year. You've worked from September, October, all the way through, and then February 5th hits. And by February 15th, you're a quarter of your way through your season, and you're either a have or a have not, or you're already fighting for your life. I don't think people, and I don't think a lot of the anglers, particularly the newer ones, understand how fast important things happen on the Elite Series.
I don't know. We haven't seen that with the past couple rookie classes. I mean, they've just gone through like it was a regular Tuesday nighter. One difference this year is obviously there's no Florida to start, which whether real or imagined is a lot of anglers' kryptonite. A lot of people think they can't catch them in Florida, or they're going to catch them and they get disappointed. That's kind of a mental mind screw. Mm-hmm. But every tournament counts the same. You think of the year Palahniuk won Angler of the Year and he finished like 178th or whatever it was at Okeechobee to start the year. As long as you fish well going forward, obviously you can make up for that in the right set of circumstances. But a Palahniuk is a different breed of cat, right? I mean, if you're average Joe angler and you're suddenly in 98th place after 3 tournaments in the Angler of the Year standings, you start fishing differently, right? You start taking you're a hockey guy. You pull the goalie and you try to score. And when you pull the goalie, a lot of times you end up getting scored on. So it's easy to let things get out of hand.
I want to say like over the last 4 or 5 years, the average is like 63 or 64% of the guys who are inside the Classic cut after the first swing of the year go on to make the Classic.
That would make sense.
Which is a pretty good bump there.
I mean, I think the big difference in the Elite Series today versus the Elite Series in 2006 is that in 2006, you knew guys had to get over certain humps. They had to get over the Florida hump, or they had to be able to be in 10th place going into the northern swing because they weren't going to catch them with a spinning rod up there. Now, there are very few guys who can't do a little bit of everything. So it's ruined fantasy fishing for me. I mean, it's ruined the predictions game for a lot of us. But how many times now do you see a guy who they say he had no chance of winning, or no one had him on their fantasy team and he wins the whole deal? Mm-hmm. It happens all the time.
Will we see that this year? Do you think that you will look at like a Gunnersville and you will see the guys who have been pegged as forward-facing sonar guys struggle, and then they'll catch them in a week or two at Lake Martin, and then they'll struggle again until they get to Lake Murray, and then they'll struggle? Like, do you think it will be that visible where, hey, the guys who have been around for a long time catch them with the no forward-facing, and the guys who are the new age scopers don't catch them with the no forward facing? Do you think we'll be able to look at that?
No, it's not going to be that clean. I mean, first of all, the sample size is too small with just 9 tournaments, but you're not going to see a presumed scoper catch him in every scoping tournament and finish 98th in every non-scoping tournament. I think what it comes down to is we presume certain guys are scoper because the way their hat looks or their age or things like that. there are probably a handful of guys who won't catch them as well anytime there's no scope. And there are probably a handful of guys who are in their 50s who will only catch them in the non-scope tournaments or only be competitive in the non-scope tournaments. But realistically, 90% of your elite pros can catch them with or without. Tucker Smith showed catchers are going to catch.
Mm-hmm. Is that your pick as the perceived scoper who were, give me a handful of guys who you think that on the outlook, the average fan is going to go, oh, this guy's really going to struggle this year. But when it's all said and done, they're going to look back and be like, oh, we were not giving angler A, B, C, and D enough credit. And the split schedule actually showed that these guys can catch them regardless of what the format is.
I think Trey McKinney is a prime example of that. He's come close to winning Angler of the Year twice. He's perceived to be a scoper. I think he's going to catch him like Tucker Smith did in the Ultimate Angler Championship. Trey McKinney's going to catch him no matter where you put him. Put him on a parking lot mud puddle with a Zebco 303, and he's still going to catch him in some way. And I think a lot of those guys fall into that category. The Kyle Patricks, the JT Tompkins, the Tyler Williams, that whole group is perceived to be, because they came in and they were really that first rookie class, that class that will now be third-year pros. They're perceived to have benefited the most from the scope and perceived to be able to do the least. And I think we're going to see if they can all catch them.
Interesting. Let's take a look at something that hasn't really been talked a lot about, but I think also is a big change for the 2026 season. And that is the shifted no information or off limits rules, which had gone from when the schedule was announced to a 30-day off limits now. The biggest inclusion in this is no purchasing or bartering of information prior to those 30 days. But, I can call up Pete if we're headed to the Potomac in 35 days and say, Pete, is there a stretch of that Potomac that you would highly suggest I take a gander at for the Derb in a month and a half? I think there's been a lot of opinions and talk and thought about what the quote right off limits rules are. Pete, you've been covering this a long time, and so have I. I would say that month long, 2 week to a month long has been pretty standard for the duration. And it wasn't until recently that we're trying to implement this whole once the schedule is released or a year off limits.
I think there was good intent with the once the schedule is released rule. I think it was really hard to enforce. And just because something is hard to enforce doesn't mean you should have it as a rule. But I think 30 days is just as fair. I guess someone can get waypoints before then. They're not bartering for them or buying them, and that would help them substantially. But really, you think of Van Dam. When Van Dam was at his best, what he was doing was learning as the tournament went along. He was still practicing on the first day of the tournament and getting better and figuring out where fish were going. And guys who get stuck in what was happening 30 days or 60 days ago, obviously a waypoint or a best stretch can help you. But these guys are all good enough to find the best stretches on any particular body of water. Individual waypoints or individual pieces of information may help a little bit. But ultimately, I think the guys who are in the moment, to coin a phrase, are the ones who are going to do the best.
So not a huge shift. You're not going to see anglers that are suddenly up at the top because of their, you can look at it as a skill of gathering the most pertinent and relevant information up until those 30 days until you can then only see the public information.
I think it can make a difference on the margins. I don't think if you remember 2007, 2008, when it was kind of the Wild West, there were always rumors that there were guys who were getting information at every stop, and they may have been. And you'd see a guy make a classic and have a fantastic year who had never had a fantastic year before. But again, those are at the margins. Not if everyone's getting the best information, then no one's getting the best information.
It's a very valid point, Mr. Robbins. I also think it's nice then, as we are wrapping up boat show season, that these guys can go to boat shows without having to literally hide in the corner by the concession stand yelling, "Don't talk to me." So yeah, I love the 30 days for as far as that, because instead you go to these boat shows and you go, hey, Gunnersville's off limits, but you can talk about the Tom Bigby, the Arkansas, Lake Murray, Santee Cooper, the Pasquotank, Lake Champlain, the St. Lawrence River. And that's how we connect as anglers. That's how me and you, that's what we have in common is, hey, you're coming to the Arkansas River in April. Like, let me tell you, I caught a 6-pounder out of the Arkansas. No way. Tell me about that fish. Before that rule was changed, it would be like, cool, go away. I can't talk to you about it. And that's what you went to that show to talk to that guy about.
Hopefully the biggest difference will be fewer disqualifications and season altering disqualifications, because whether fair or not fair, it left a stain on last season to see, and the joke was that there was a BFL, I guess it was at Rayburn to start the year, where someone got DQ'd or a pair of brothers got DQ'd. And the big joke was, it took us 3 days this year to have our first DQ.
Yeah, no, I said
it. Whether it's fair or unfair, I mean, the people who are committing true crimes and violating the spirit and the letter of the law, you want them disqualified because hopefully it keeps people honest. But I think last year there were a lot of gray area cases where it might have been the right decision to disqualify them or not to, but it left a stain on the season as a whole. It left people with a salty taste in their mouth.
Yeah. I would like to think that we could get through the entire 2026 Bassmaster Elite Series season without a single DQ.
I hope so. That would be great. I mean, the goal this year, you talked about this being a transformative year on the Elite Series. The goal this year is to come away from each tournament with a positive feeling rather than that guy only won because he scoped, or that guy lives in a gray area, or no one likes that guy. You know what? You haven't been married long enough to understand this, but there are times when you're right in an argument with your wife and you want to point it out to her, and you have to shut the hell up because you're not, even if you win, you're not going to win. And I hope that Elite Series pros and fans and tournament officials and pundits and whoever else, when you have that inclination after a tournament to say, yeah, but he wouldn't have won if it had been a scoping tournament, or he wouldn't have won if it had been a no scoping tournament, shut the hell up. Think about what the positive we could take away. 99 guys had a great week. It was a great week for the sport. We set record numbers. Let's not focus on that 1% that feels negative. I don't know how else to say it.
No, I totally agree. And I, in full transparency, have been accused of being a Bass Angler Sportsman Society loyalist, possibly not holding their feet to the fire as much as certain other members of the independent media. But that being said, if Bassmaster wanted some excitement, some mystery, some unknown, and a pop to kick off this season, the fact that it is no forward-facing sonar, the fact that you have that field, the fact that it's on Lake Gunnersville, the fact that we have these conditions. I mean, this is one of the top 3 historic bass fisheries on Earth. There's a lot of unknown, and there's been a ton of tournaments already in the past 2 weeks down in Florida. Great events, fantastic events, easy to get lost in the shuffle though, whether it's, Toho or the Harris chain or Okeechobee. You're dealing with all sorts of stuff, and it's just kind of that. I think a lot of people have really been looking forward to, me included, this first Elite Series tournament of the year. And from that respect, I think Bass has done a really good job of getting it off the ground and kind of separating itself. There's a little feeling for that BPT as well a couple weeks ago, but I think the weather actually is helping the Elite Series going into this, because I think you're going to see huge numbers log on that first morning to be like, all right, let's see what happens here.
Yeah, people who've been locked up inside waiting for this new paradigm in terms of forward-facing sonar are ready to watch fishing. I hope that's a good thing. I hope people are, you said your numbers were good in January. I hope that means that people are excited about fishing. And that's coming out of, if you think of this off-season, I was thinking about it today, normally during the off-season between tours, you hear all the silly season announcements. So-and-so got this non-endemic sponsor. This guy got this boat sponsor. This guy is making $8 billion from this. How many of those did you hear this year? New sponsorship press releases, none, or close to none.
Yeah.
So the industry is in a weird place, and we have to recognize that it's tough for these pros to make a living. There are more opportunities to make a living than ever before, which may dilute the pool. But at the same time, the average fan wants to see you go out and catch them and teach us how to catch them. And the average fan doesn't get to go to Gunnersville on a Wednesday when the bite is just wide open and you can throw a cigarette butt and catch them. The average fan has to go and break ice to get in, or fish his Tuesday nighter when his trolling motor doesn't work. They want to see the hardships. It's why people remember the Pittsburgh Classic more than about 20 other classics.
That's a great point. If you're a rookie in the 2026 Elite Series, so Fisher and Aya, Austin Cranford, Sam Hangy, Aaron Jagfeld, like I said, Russ Lane's returning, Tristan McCormick, Matt Messer, Brock Rankemeyer, Pake South, Nick Trim. In your opinion, is it a good time to be a rookie in professional bass fishing? I'm looking at some of these past classes and I'm going, okay, there were guys that were there not to fish the open to see if they could be competitive. They were there to hopefully be in the opens for 1 year. They had a game plan. They went through, they put every other competitor through a damn meat grinder and said, okay, we're here on the Elite Series. This is the first class, obviously there's familiar names and things in here, but this is the first class in a couple years that I from the outside looking in, there's not 8, 9, 10 of these guys who you're like, oh, that guy is here to kick everyone's ass. Like I've interviewed Caleb Hudson and stuff, and he's like, hey, very talented angler, excited to get here, but like this thing kind of developed during the year as to, my God, I'll have a shot at making the Elite Series. Do you get that feeling with the majority of this year's class as opposed to like the Trey McKinney, Patrick, JT Tompkins, some of those classes in the past where it was like those guys seem like they were like little robots that were like designed to be Elite Series pros?
I don't know if robots, but it didn't seem like they knew they were supposed to be afraid of the guys who were already there. And I think these 10 coming in this year, or 9 plus Russ, have watched what's gone on the past 2 years, watched how much the young guys have gotten crapped on, deservedly or not. And if you're a smart incoming rookie, you say, I want to be liked. There's going to be a period at Muskogee where I'm going to be stuck in the back of a creek in a log jam, and a 50-year-old dude is going to be the only guy back there with me. He better help me get back to weigh-in. I don't want to be, disliked or disrespected by him. And there's a lot of that. I think, every rookie gets punked at some point. A veteran convinces you to share a stretch of bank, but he gets the good part of the bank and you don't. Or he agrees to lay off something in the morning and then you find him there. I'm not saying anyone's dishonorable or disreputable, but rather that there's a hazing period, right? As there kind of should be. I mean, you show respect, you get respect. And I think if these guys are smart, they've learned that by showing respect to their elders, to the people who came before them, and by towing the company line for the most part, it's going to benefit their career in the long run.
All right, let's look over the 2025 Elite Series Angler of the Years, and I want to get your take on a couple of guys who you think are going to have rebound years. Obviously, we were on a pattern here with Chris Johnson winning back-to-back Angler of the Years, but I'm looking at this list and I'm seeing last year Steve Kennedy in 97, the Mike Iaconelli in 96, a Jamie Hartman in 91st, a Menendez in 88, the Buddy. Like, I'm seeing a lot of guys who are established big-time pros who you're used to seeing up there. A Zaldane in 82nd, Cliff Pace in 81st, Swindle in 76, like a Hank Cherry in 80th. Who do you kind of have your sights on for a little bit of a redemption arc in 2026?
Well, I mean, you named all the guys who are in my age class, children of the 70s. So I mean, the one I look to obviously is Hackney, finished in the 60s last year. Hackney's a guy who, even in the forward-facing sonar era, has gone and done his thing and done it better than anyone else. So I look for him to rebound. I hope Randy Howell has a great year. Randy Howell struggled last year in his first year back on the Elites. He's starting off at his home lake of Gunnersville, where he happened to win a classic. His son, Laker, did not make the Elites, but Laker is obviously going to make the Elites at some point. I think I'd like to see Randy and Laker compete at the same time.
That would be cool. And
the third story there is obviously Ike, with announcing his retirement from tournament fishing at the end of this year. And Ike win, like, you were at the Philadelphia tournament when he won, right?
Yes.
One of the coolest things ever, him going into the crowd of thousands of people from New Jersey and Pennsylvania going crazy for him. Like, an Ike win would do great things for the sport.
How ironic that the dog starts barking when you talk about Ike and Nelly.
I was there too for that. Another great, like when you think of Ike and Nelly, think of all the great moments in the sport that you have. And I think that's what this rookie class or the past couple of rookie classes don't have. And it's not fair to hold them to that at this point because they haven't had much time on the elites. But the memorable moments are what make the sport. Think of the classics you remember the most. Think of the FU dog. Think of Takahiro yelling, I knew it, I knew it. Think of Ike's DQs. Like all of that is what makes the sport memorable. Like the tuck rule game in football. Every sport has iconic moments, and for Ike to win another one would be another iconic moment. Iconic moment.
Yeah, that would be good. My top guys are I would love to see Gerald Swindle come back with the year. I think if you look at that schedule with the Arkansas River on it, with the Tom Big B, with a couple of non-scope events, I think that there's some opportunities for Swindle to do what Swindle has been known for in the past, and that is come in with a better than average grimy limit that knocks out a couple of top tens. I mean, health wise, hopefully he's got those knees back up and in working order, and he'll be in mid-season form sooner than rather than later. So I'd like to see that. I also think that this could be a really good comeback year for Cody Huff. You look at Cody Huff and kind of what we expected and some of the wins that he had before. He finished in 73rd this past year. He has all the tools in his toolbox. It would actually surprise me if Cody Huff wasn't lurking around that top 10 number there. And then also I want to throw Jacob Porosnik in there, 66th place. I mean, Porosnik over the last 15 years has been the absolute model of consistency. And I would expect to see him back up towards the top of the Angler of the Year as well.
One more there who, for personal reasons, I'd like to see, and because I know he's capable, is Gussie. It's going to be an absolute shame to not see Gussie at a Knoxville Classic fishing for smallmouth there.
Yeah, I agree. We're going to take a break. When we come back, we're going to start going down the list, which includes the Knoxville Classic, and a Knoxville Classic without Jeff Gustafson we're going to have that conversation, Pete. Like, is that spot up for grabs? Is that like, how does that work now? I mean, even in the Classic, there was still kind of Gussie was like, come on guys, like you're here because of me. With no Gussie in it, there's a known winning stretch for the Bassmaster Classic with $300,000 on the line. And I'm interested to see, just kind of looking already a month and a half in advance, your thoughts on how that's going to go down. We're going to run through the rest of each of the Elite Series tournaments with Pete Robbins. You're a longtime senior writer and reporter, freelance.
Not a journalist, a writer.
A writer. Are you freelance or you work for Bass? Both. We don't have to go through that.
Yeah.
Mix. All right. For Bassmaster. But then also, when we've had Pete on before, it's the half past first cast. You can get on that. Him and his lovely wife, Hannah, who is not happy with you, by the way. I saw a comment on there after the old, you're right, but you got to leave it alone comment. I would, man, I don't know if you've got any like old baseball or football helmets in the house, but I might want to seek one of those out before the end of the show. Get out there for all the exciting shows. And then you also write for the Yamamoto one?
Yamamoto's Inside Line, Outdoor Life, various tackle companies who probably don't want to be named. I do a little bit of everything, looking to make a buck.
It is BTL on a Monday, the Monday before the start of the 2026 Bassmaster Elite Series season for 101 excited and frozen anglers on Lake Guntersville. We'll be back in 2 minutes.
The new Puma STS has been redesigned from the ground up. With the angler, design, function, and performance in mind, nothing on this new offering was compromised, and the only thing carried over from the previous version is the name. Based on the Soft Touch series hull that started with the flagship Jaguar, this new model is nimble and performs incredibly well at all speeds with either a 250 or 300 horsepower engine. Featuring a new 96-inch wide-body footprint, this hull measures out at 20 foot 7 inches in length. Industry-leading design coupled with tournament-winning performance. The Puma STS from Basscat. Feel the rush.
Before there were hashtags, there were handshakes and shared stories. They gave us confidence to make our first cast and chase our dreams. They taught us to fish, and in the process, taught us about life. They taught us that success isn't just about reaching the top. It's about lifting others up. The future isn't just about selling tackle. It's about 3 simple words. Let's go fishing. Here's to the original influencers.
I fish in some of the worst elements across the country. Spring, that's a giant, dude. Summer, oh my gosh. Hi, look at that thing. Winter, it's so cold. And fall, got a big one. That's awesome.
Being comfortable and staying dry is the only option.
AFCO, any fish, any water.
All right, welcome back. BTL on a Monday, joined with Pete Robbins, Bass Fishing Hall of Fame board member. Yeah, you guys were in Chicago for that stuff when it was gnarly, weren't you? Wasn't it like
that was it. John Mazurkowitz idea. It worked out well because Hannah and I had a booth at the Chicagoland Fishing Show, which so I got to double dip on that one. Although the fishing show was a bit of mystery to me.
Fair enough. Yeah, they deal with a lot of odd ice fish. Those are a lot of ice fishing stuff there, Pete.
It was bizarre. We're trying to sell trips to Panama and Guatemala and Mexico, and literally people would walk up to our booth and I'd say, "Do you travel to fish?" And they'd say, "Yes." And I'd say, "Where?" And they'd say, "Wisconsin." And I'd say, "Well, do you travel internationally?" "Yes." "Where?" "Canada." And then I'd say, "Don't you want to go someplace warm? It's like negative 80 degrees." They said, "Well, it's warm in Canada in the summer." And I said, you kind of missed my point, dog. This has to end.
All right, let's go over these because I want to get to the classics. So we kind of walk through Gunnersville, Lake Martin, Alabama, forward-facing sonar. I mean, that's going to be Spotapalooza, is it not, Pete? Here in a couple of weeks, Spotapalooza, and the wild card is going to be if Hackney Christie. Well, Christie might. He's won a classic on a minnow on a spotted bass, but the wild card is going to be if anybody can run up a river and flip up enough largemouth to compete with all the scoped spots.
Or how about, speaking of guys who we want to see do well, if Steve Kennedy goes somewhere and throws a big glide bait and catches a bunch of largemouths?
I believe that Lake Martin, that Steve and his dad have a lot of deep, rich history on that pond.
Yes, they have a cabin on the lake. I've stayed there for a couple days, and it's so awesome. Like, you go into the cabin and there's trophies everywhere, and most of them are Steve's dad's, but plenty are Steve's as well. And just to go out on a lake where he has that much history is a very special experience.
Has there been an Elite Series stop outside, I'm going to say this, outside of Lake Tenkiller and Jason Christie, or outside of Fort Gibson and Tommy Biffle, where an angler has so many years of, like, not like, oh, they fish tournaments there, but like they fished there their entire lives, like grew up on it, like known every detail about it, fished the local bass club there, the team trails there, like everything. Like I'm just thinking Oklahoma because of that. I'm wondering if I'm missing anyone else.
I mean, if you're thinking about where it gives them a distinct advantage over the competition, Ike on the Delaware River to me is the ultimate example of that.
Okay.
I mean, a place with I think it was a 7-foot tide swing where likely 90+% of the field had never even heard of it before it got put on the schedule. And he had years and years and years of knowing the little sweet spots there. Makes a big difference. That's great.
But I would put this Kennedy tournament in that category.
He has that, but I don't know if it gives him that much of an advantage because it's going to be an FFS tournament. Plenty of guys have fished Alabama tours for you. I mean, I'm sure Jordan Lee has fished there a million times. And I think there are so many spots in that lake that it's going to be easy to catch fish, maybe not the winning fish, but competitive fish without having any experience there.
Fair enough. All right, let's get to the crown jewel of it, the Bassmaster Classic out of Knoxville, Tennessee, competed under the 2025 forward-facing sonar rules, so it is a forward-facing sonar event. We saw what Gussie did in the regular season. Then he backed it up with a Bassmaster Classic out of kind of the same area, doing the same thing, that moping minnow technique. We've also seen Ott Defo take the local advantage there in Knoxville with a plug and a chatterbait and win, I believe it was the 2019 Bassmaster Classic. But is this going to be a storyline in your opinion, Pete? Who lays claim to Gussie's magic stretch now that he's not there to defend it?
I think smallmouths are going to be a story because the smallmouth limit has gone from 18 inches to 15 inches there for the purposes of this tournament. So you will have people chasing smallmouths. My sense is from talking to people that the magic stretch is great for 18-inch smallmouths, but there are other places in the system that haven't been tapped yet that may have equal populations or better populations that you won't have to split. So I think smallmouths will be a story. The stretch may or may not be. I mean, it wouldn't be a classic or an Elite Series event without seeing people battle over turf, either in a friendly manner or a non-friendly manner. But I don't know that it'll be one there again.
Will we see a non-friendly manner turf war on that stretch at some point of the Classic play out on live?
Depends who's involved. I mean, it depends who the guys are who are involved. You know, some guys are a little more confrontational, a little more surly about people coming on their perceived stuff than others. And certain guys, as we know, are not afraid to get in confrontations on live.
Is it a free for all in your opinion, though? There's no one. I mean, it's a slippery slope as whether you can even claim stuff tournament to tournament. But I mean, like, no one would disagree that if Gussie's at the event, like, he could roll in there and be like, "Hey, boys, good morning, leave."
Yes.
But now, is it a first come, first serve? Whoever, if that is still a viable stretch like this, it's free game. Fair play for all 56 anglers.
Go rub rail to rub rail, cast over each other. I don't care. I kind of hope that becomes a story, and I hope not that I hope no one wins there, but I think it will be a better Classic if someone does not win there, but people contend there. If you have two guys who end up second and third from that spot, and we have the forever story of would they have won if they had it to themselves, that's a lot cooler story than if someone goes there and wins on their own.
Okay, hear me out on this, Pete, and I'd like to get your take on it. Just watching the social media and the photos that came out of pre-practice for this event while the guys were down there. Look, I saw a lot of big giant fish caught by a lot of youngsters. And you could even make the case that the fishery was not exploited to its full potential with forward-facing sonar because there is a lot of water. There's 2 lakes in play. There's all that. And even in the Gussie Classic, maybe the percentage of anglers who go look for the off-the-wall stuff, the young stuff, you know, the Trey McKinney, that type of stuff wasn't in play. I am somewhat under the impression that you are going to see this fishery play way bigger with bigger weights and more guys with the minnow, the jerkbait, the forward facing in areas that were there all along, but these guys are really, you know, exploiting to where we're going to see bigger bass, bigger bags, longer runs, more non-traditional stuff than the custom balsas, the chatterbaits, and the moping on Gussie stretch. Is that a fair assessment based on kind of how you're seeing this Classic shape up?
Yeah, I mean, obviously it comes down to conditions, just like Guntersville does this week. If we have a huge cold front or we have a massive amount of muddy water roll in, or we have a huge warming trend running into it, those all affect how things play out. But I think it's a bigger fishery than what we've seen. I think it's a more diverse fishery than what we've seen. And we're going to, I mean, if you remember the year, I think it was the year Ott won, Zaldane had like a 20-pound bag thrown a mag draft.
Yep.
So there are a lot of different things you can do there. Brian Schmidt caught him in super skinny water, I think, throwing a drop shot. But he could have just easily been flipping a power bait. Someone's going to find something off the wall and contend, or something we haven't been conditioned to expect and contend. They may not win because the dominant paradigm may be Gussie's stretch and moping again. But if you think of the evolution of fishing in the past 5 or 6 years, it's changed more quickly than at any time in the history of the Elite Series. It feels like 2006, 2007, 2008, and then you hit like 2020, and all of a sudden there's a hockey stick upward.
Yeah, I agree. One thing, Pete, tell the fans how hard it is. You're not even involved in this, but you know how hard it is to put together a schedule with all of the professional trails. And then with Bassmaster, you've got the high school and the college, and then you have the 8 opens that go across it. And you have to work with the different communities, and then you have specific times of the year. It is hard to fit a schedule together that makes sense even at the top level. Am I off base on that?
I've never been directly involved, but as all the variables that you identified clearly make it difficult. And I think the most frustrating thing is that no matter what you do, people are unhappy. Why aren't they going to the Columbia River? Why aren't they going to Mille Lacs this year? Why aren't they going to Sebago Lake in Maine? You know, a lot of it obviously comes down to money. The anglers want to get paid. The tournament trails have to make money. So there are a limited number of places that have the proper components to hold an Open, an Elite Series, and certainly a Classic. So when people ask why we go back to the same Classic venues over and over again, it's not because they're necessarily the best fisheries, although many of them are quite good. It's because they fit the suit. You know, that they fit the 12 components that you need to make it right at that time of year.
So after the Classic, there's a 1 week off, and then we come back, and I want to get your thoughts on this next stretch, because I have some thoughts on this next stretch. March 26th to 29th, Tennessee, Tom Bigby Waterway out of Mississippi, no forward facing. And then April 16th through 19th, Arkansas River out of Muskogee. They can use forward facing there. This March and April tournament, your thoughts on either or both of those?
I love river system tournaments. I mean, some of the highlights last year all involved Pat Schlopper. When you look at the Sabine and you look at the upper Mississippi, those river fishing tournaments are cool. That's what I grew up doing. And if you're a power fisherman, they're a dream scenario, right? You're going in, you're likely fishing fairly shallow in most cases, and you're fishing for bass in heavy cover. One of them is FFS, one of them is not. I think FFS will matter at the Arkansas River because it matters everywhere when it's allowed. I mean, it makes things, guys who win at the James River here, or guys who go to Okeechobee. Remember Scott Martin winning at Okeechobee using forward-facing sonar. It enhances. It doesn't make the tournament. You don't have to be using it to win it, but it takes some guys who would be also Rams and makes them contenders.
I love this stretch, and I think Bass did an awesome job of chopping this year into blocks where guys go into it and they say, we are now in my wheelhouse. I need to make hay. If you are a Greg Hackney, let's take an example. He has remained relevant. He has managed to still catch him. There are certain tournaments that he's struggled in, which I'm sure he's not used to because he's never struggled before. And it's not like he's not catching them. He's still catching them. He's just getting out caught. But if I'm Greg, I'm going into Gunnersville with no scope. I'm pumped about that, even if I'm trying to punch through the ice right now. Lake Martin, maybe I'm the power guy who goes, my God, we didn't know these largemouth exist. You know, but Kennedy did to where he does it. But then that Tom Bigby and Arkansas River, assuming they can fish on the Arkansas River, and if they can't, they'll probably go back to Fort Gibson and it'll be a bush flipping deal because that means the Arkansas River will be blown out. Those are two. That's the equivalent of the Champlain, St. Lawrence, or Oneida, Champlain, or whatever at the end of the year where you've got that group of guys who look at it and go, okay, I'm going to top 10 both of those. They have given that to the power fishermen with the Tom Bigby and the Arkansas River. Now, is Bass putting themselves in a potential predicament with the time of the year and the spring and flooding and stuff like that? Absolutely. But it's Mother Nature and it's fishing, and however it works out is going to work out. But assuming that the Arkansas River is fishable, you have an early, you have maybe a pre-spawn, an early spawn, or a mid-spawn event on the Arkansas River, which is just going to be hand-to-hand combat. And then the Tom Bigby, which we saw in the Open, is doing it. That is a tip of the cap to the Caleb Sumralls, the Greg Hackney, the Wes Logans, those type of guys. And I think there's going to be a lot of people that are fired up for that as we reach the midway point of the year.
So if you're Hackney and you leave Alabama with 2 top 20s, let's say, you sit out the Classic, you have to go work a booth, have people asking why you're not in the Classic.
By April 20th, I would assume if I'm Greg Hackney, I'm going to be planning on leading the Angler of the Year at the halfway point after the Tom Bigby in Arkansas.
And you know, he hasn't won one for 12 years. He's won an Angler of the Year. He has to be thinking, you know, Greg Hackney to me is a likely Hall of Famer at some point. A second Angler of the Year award when he already has the Forest Wood Cup. He has the Bass Angler of the Year. I think he has an FLW Angler of the Year. If he adds another Angler of the Year, he becomes a shoo-in. He puts that final chapeau on his career. And you have to be thinking at that point about Angler of the Year, winning it at 50-something years old.
Yeah, it's interesting. We talk so much about the young scopers on the Elite Series. But, Pete, if you go down the list, there are a lot of the top power fishermen on earth that are still on the Elite Series. They haven't gone anywhere, and they still make hay when they can. I mean, listen, you still have the Drew Bentons, a young guy like Bo Browning. Like, yeah, that guy likes to get up there. I mean, Stephen Browning's son, he'd disown him if he wasn't a power fisherman. Canterbury, Blake Capps, Jason Christie, Drew Cook, John Cox. I'll tell you who likes to get up there. Austin Cranford, a rookie. He ain't scared of 25-pound string in 2-foot deep water. Seth Feider, John Garrett. He can get up there and fish it. Buddy Gross, Greg Hackney, Randy Howell, Ike Anelli, the Johns, like Chris and Corey Johnson. They love power fishing.
It doesn't matter.
How many times have we seen them?
It doesn't matter how many times those guys finish in the 90s. No one is going to be surprised if they win the next tournament.
Yeah, 100%.
It's a Denny Brower, Tommy Biffle mentality.
Yeah, Russ Lane, Jordan Lee, Lee Livesey, Wes Logan, Bill Lowen, Menendez, Brock Mosley, Brian New. Like, these are all guys that are still on the Elite Series that you're looking at that schedule. And is there a single one of those that you're, I mean, no. I have high expectations.
One person we haven't mentioned is Keith Combs. If Keith Combs catches 110 pounds at Guntersville, are you going to be surprised? No. He's caught 110 pounds in his sleep plenty of times throughout his life.
Yeah, 100%. All right. Then this is why I love this schedule, because then we get back to like, okay, you just got your teeth kicked in by the guys who take a 5-minute break to eat potted meat after they flip up a 14-pound limit on a stingy Arkansas river. But we're going to give you an early May herring spawn Lake Murray derb with forward-facing sonar.
To me, that's one where the forward-facing will make less of a difference. There will be guys who go out and ping them and catch them on a minnow, but there will be guys, remember that last time they were at Murray about the same time?
They were blowing up on top.
Catching them on a big pencil popper, or Hunter Shryock catching them super shallow on both a whopper plopper and then under docks, or Chapo, I guess, with his deal. I mean, that's a cool tournament where it's a great one to have no scoping, where I don't think it's going to make a huge difference.
Yeah. And then following that up, the exact following week is Santee Cooper. Is there a bass swimming around that cypress tree? No one knows. We can't use forward-facing sonar to see. We could just get, that image of the 360, but we can't be pitching directly to them now.
It's great. And Santee is another place where they obviously live. I'd feel much worse if it was a Santee that had no population of quality fish. But, the year, when was the last time they were there? The year Palaniuk won? 2020?
No, Luke Palmer.
Oh, Luke Palmer winning.
And then they had an open there.
And then they had it. So, I mean, all these guys have history there. They know where they live. And my understanding is several guys went back in the fall before it officially went off limits while there was still grass up to go look around and see what was going on.
They'll catch him.
Yeah, they're going to catch him.
This is very interesting to me. Forward-facing sonar allowed Pasquotank River, Arbor Merle Sound, biggest winning margin in history. Kyle Welcher absolutely caved everybody's heads in last time they were there. And I know if I'm an Elite Series guy who spent $1,700 in gas to catch 11 pounds 109 miles away, and then I saw how and where it went down with Kyle Welcher, I'm looking close, because I promise you those fish that will not be on the beds this time around in June, my God, they're not swimming 100 miles away. I'm very interested in seeing how this tournament goes down, because it's a different time of the year, but it was brand new for every single one of these anglers prior to last year's tournament. And it'll be interesting to see how that dynamic shifts now that they're back for the second time.
So going back to your Gussie in the Classic question, I recognize this one is different times a year. Does Kyle Welcher have an inalienable right to that stretch again if he wants it. I know there were other anglers milling about.
It wouldn't surprise me if Kyle Welcher doesn't even go look at that stretch because he knows that they're not spawning.
But I mean, they'll be in some area adjacent to it, so maybe it's not the same thing.
Kyle Welcher plays chess, so I could literally see him making other anglers think that he wants to be in that area while he's doing something 20 miles away, and he knows on the first morning there's 10 guys fighting it out for a spot that he doesn't even want to be at.
I just hope it's won someplace cool at the Pasquotank, because there are so many cool sounding names. I used to fish the Showan a lot, and back in the early 2000s, and there's the Alligator River, there's the Scuppernong River. There's just like a Scuppernong River, like dating. You're not old enough for Harry and Charlie and Bassmaster.
Oh yeah, Scuppernong flavored jelly worm was Harry and Charlie's. That's what down at the swamp gas corner store, they picked up the old Scuppernong flavored jelly worm.
So if it's one in the Scuppernong,
give me some credit, Pete.
Does that become like a Catawachi, a place that people or the Bobo Hole or something like that people always remember it was one in the Scuppernong? That, to me, I want that. I want Hackney winning in the Scuppernong and yelling "Godzilla ain't got nothing on me." That becomes like the most memorable tournament of the year at that point.
This is all leading to something. I don't know if you tell it. So Santee Cooper, no. Albemarle Sound, but they're not spawning, yes, on forward-facing sonar. So who is the guy that comes to mind on these two heavy hitter power fishing venues? It's Hackney.
I think Hackney and another guy you mentioned before is a Porosnik.
Yeah.
Right? Porosnik is a guy who's going to sneak off. No one's going to be watching him, and he's going to dink in there with a Senko or something like that and catch 8 billion pounds of bass.
Just look at how we've broken down this schedule so far, though. Gunnersville, no scope. Martin, you have to get through it. Tom Bigby and Arkansas River in March and April. Lake Murray, early May, where, like you mentioned, if you're not a screen guy, you can friggin' compete on the top water on the shallow fish. Then Santee Cooper, no scope, middle of May, Pasquotank in June. Dude, this is the comeback revolution tour for the Hackneys. I gotta say that Welcher won Angler of the Year not that long ago. The Christies, the Bill Lowens. Like, the more you actually dive into this, the more this sets up for old school, grind it out, catch him how you caught him in 2012. Am I wrong on this, Pete?
No, and you mentioned Bill Lowen again, who had a good season last year. Obviously had another Elite Series win. Are you going to be surprised if Bill Lowen wins Angler of the Year? How great would that be? One of the nicest guys in the sport, someone who's old school, but still doesn't come off as old, if that makes sense. I mean, he's been around forever, but he doesn't come off as the crusty old guy. I would love to see Bill win an Angler of the Year. That would be fantastic. Bill Hackney winning Angler of the Year, fantastic, but no one's going to be surprised if Trey McKinney wins it either.
Drugwood says Hackney won't be in the top 25 in June.
Wow. That's a shot across the bow.
I would take that bet. Would you take that bet?
Yeah. With the Pasquotank, two river systems.
He's going to be in the top 25 at June.
And I've got to figure between Ten Tom and Arkansas River, he spent a ton of time there. I mean, he's from Arkansas, lives in Louisiana, fished all over that region, been around since you were a child.
I said, if that Arkansas River gets moved, it will be to a flooded Oklahoma fishery.
Yeah.
I mean, whether they go back to 10 Killer, whether they go to Fort Gibson, whatever, anything around there is going to be willows and bushes, because the only reason it would be moved is because of the flooding. All right, we're going to put a cherry on this, then we'll let you go. You've fulfilled your hour commitment. I greatly appreciate it. I know that you've got other things to attend to. You're an adult.
I kind of do, and I kind of don't. If you'll indulge me for 1 minute.
Yeah, have at it.
I've practiced law for 30 years, and I retired on December 31st from that. And I retired in the way that KBD and Ike retired. I'm just as busy, if not busier, but I am happy. Like, I wake up ready to work every day. I'm like, to get to do this in the middle of the day, to do a podcast like this is pure joy to me. And I'm going to be at most of the Elite Series tournaments. To me, it feels like, just as all the 50-year-old guys have a new lease on life who are fishing the tour and have a chance to go out and do their thing in half the tournaments and prove that they're still competitive, I feel like I've been reborn. Like this is my make or break season. And so I can relate to them and I'm excited for it. I'm excited to be there when things go down more often.
Well, congratulations.
Thank you.
So like normally, had you not retired, you'd be like in the office this morning?
I would be in the office, probably on a conference call. Probably.
Wait, so this is your first?
This is my first BTL where like I didn't have to take vacation time or personal leave to do it. So
wow.
I do have to tell you one other thing. Our town has a club called the Romeo Club, which stands for Retired Old Men Eating Out. And and I was like, this is my year of yes. If someone calls and says, you want to go ice fishing? I'm going ice fishing. So last Friday, the Romeo Club had a lunch in town and I went. I was definitely the youngest guy by far, but I've earned my stripes to be the old crusty guy. I've got so much gray.
You're the guy in Hardee's that gives you the eyeball when you walk in and you've got the steaming hot coffee and the biscuit of every morning.
Yeah, I want to be the 8 old guys who sit there every day and just kind of solve the world's problems. Like I'm going to go to Elite Series tournaments this year, and I'm driving to Guntersville tomorrow. If I want to stop at Guntersville Tackle, I'm going to stop at Guntersville Tackle and spend a few $100. If I want to go to the Waffle House or whatever else, this is my year to not be rushed, if that makes sense. I think that will make me a better writer and a better fan of the sport.
So your neck of the woods is you're based out of what general area?
Virginia, near the Potomac.
Virginia. Okay. If you're a BTL listener and you have a badass one of a kind trip this year, hit up Pete and he might take you up on it.
I'm ready to go. Like I literally said, someone invites me ice fishing, someone invites me on a Sasquatch hunt, whatever, I'm there. Like I've talked to all my friends in the tackle companies, in the tackle industry, and I've said, if you have a cool guide or outfitter or pro staffer who's doing something cool, I will travel on my own dime. Or if I'm already in Oklahoma, I'll drive over 2 hours to do it. Life is about having adventures, and I've spent way too much time at a desk. I need to start catching up on the adventures.
Fair enough. While we're this, before we get to the it's not the cupola. What is it? What is the top of the pyramid called? The capstone?
Yeah, okay.
That's the last 2 events here, Champlain and St. Lawrence. There was a question here. Pete, during your illustrious career, is there one article that you have written that you are most proud of?
That's from my friend Thomas Ahrens, who runs a great podcast, Fishing the DMV, and here in town. I think the article I am most proud of was the first classic I went to as a member of the media was 2004, Lake Wiley. And I rode with Aaron Martins the first day, and Aaron is a very special person to everyone in the industry. And it was when he was using the little horsey head and little scroungers, and no one had ever heard of it. And it was a pre-internet era. So I was the only person who had pictures of all of these baits that Aaron was using. And I sold the article to Bass West magazine for $400. And I thought I was rich and I thought I was famous. And that was what, not only was I proud that I was there on the scene, but it made me realize that I could have an impact on the fishing industry in ways that didn't require me to be using a rod and reel.
What percentage of that day did he fish, and what percentage of that day did he tinker?
It took me until about halfway through the day before I realized he was not talking to me. He was just talking to himself. There were a lot of knot tying explanations. He tinkered a lot. He didn't do the famous Aaron Martins, dump out your hook box in the middle of the day and reorganize it. But I have a feeling there was a lot of wasted time. Fortunately, his spot was under the Buster Boyd Bridge there. I think he idled maybe 50 yards to the spot where he stayed the whole tournament and finished second to Takahiro. But you mentioned Tommy Biffle earlier. I was given the choice by Bass whether I wanted to ride with Tommy or Aaron. And Tommy did well in that tournament. And obviously I'd love a chance to ride with Tommy Biffle. But the fact that I chose Aaron that day made a huge difference in my life.
Great question. Good story.
Thanks, Thomas.
All right, let's get to the capstone then. So we've kind of set the scene for this year, and then it ends with no forward facing on Lake Champlain in August, which we've seen. I always want to call him the Count, but it's the barrister. Headlock. No longer on the Elite Series, but we've seen that it is possible in the forward-facing area to win without forward-facing, and this will be a tournament where everybody catches them. But there will be half of the field that knows what they want to do and where the fish are to catch 20 to 22 pounds a day, roll out of bed, and they won't be able to do it because of the no forward-facing. Does Champlain look wildly different this year than it has the past 3 times the elites have been?
I think so. You think of what Kyoya did there, finding those roamers out in the middle of nowhere, that's going to be a lot harder to do now, or at least harder to do effectively. To me, you've spent a lot more time on Champlain than I have, but it makes the largemouths a bigger focus of the tournament. And I don't know if the Ticonderoga area is in play. If it is, and it becomes a player, obviously then weather becomes a big issue, as it always is at Champlain.
And we've seen 2, maybe we saw the Bass Nation regional one on no forward facing with mainly largemouth. We saw the Elite Series one like that. The largemouth are making a strong play on Lake Champlain. That'll be very interesting. But I think that there will be a lot of guys who have gone into Champlain the past 2 times fishing for a check that are used to fishing for winning on Champlain because they don't feel like they can compete with the Cisco eating smallmouth in the inland sea. And they don't have to worry about that this time.
Yeah, it changes the dynamic.
But will there be someone who figures out how to catch those fish that they know are out there without forward-facing sonar?
I don't know. I'm thinking about, I talked to Bank Shaw after the Gunnersville BPT, and he said obviously he caught them real well in the period where he had forward-facing, but he said he caught some of his big fish doing the same thing, basically pinging a minnow. I think it was a freeloader or a mooch minnow, one of those, during a non-FFS period. Once you know they're there, I think it's possible to do it. You may not catch as many. You may not be able to be as efficient, but you can still catch some of those fish.
Mm-hmm. And then St. Lawrence River with forward facing, that always just comes down to a weather event. We know what to expect there. There's about 4 or 5 guys that it's a given. If they can get to that spot, get from the way in to their spots and back, they're going to crush it. The biggest question here is how many over 100 pounds, and do we set the record for the biggest smallmouth weighed in Bassmaster history? And will we see multiple 30-pound bags? The St. Lawrence right now is absolutely ridiculous with their peak weights.
What was that Bryant Smith bag a few years ago that he had up there? It's like 29.9, 29.5, something like that.
It was ridiculous.
I mean, the question to me is, if Chris Johnston heads into that tournament in contention for Angler of the Year, do we see a consecutive three-time Angler of the Year?
How do you say no to that?
Yeah. I mean, that would be an amazing feat, obviously. It's great to have the St. Lawrence with or without FFS at the end, because there are a lot of different stories running there. It's probably, I still think there's a decent chance, or a pretty good chance, we'll see a century belt or 2 at Gunnersville, but St. Lawrence to me likely has the best chance of multiple century belts.
Yeah, I think I might have pulled up. Oh, he had, was that the one he had 29.5?
I think that was right. He beat the Chuck Economou record, which was, I believe, 29.3 from the tournament Menendez won at Pickwick in the 90s.
I think we see a first 30 rack of smallmouth in an Elite Series tournament this year.
Are you going to get tired of the term Dirty 30?
I like to say a 30 rack.
Okay, I like that.
I feel like that's a insider's way. 30, drop a 30 rack on it.
That's what the cool kids say.
Yeah. Okay. So this is a year. So what I'm picking up as you kind of dive into this with you, which I wasn't even expecting, I'd looked at it, but I like to dive into this stuff live, do a little bit of research, and then really hash it out on live, Pete, this is a really well thought out schedule. And Bass is not paying me to say this. I promise you. Because if it sucked, I would say it sucks, because I've said stuff sucks in the past. There's a lot of stuff that sucks right now. But this is a good schedule. I think the coin was fantastic in the way that it fell. Because when you actually dive into it, we have just created, and the coin and the anglers and the fisheries have just created 10 storylines that would not have been there. And, there's guys going, yeah, but the Pasca tank, when the BPT was there in the summertime, like guys were scoping 25, 30 pounds on a drop shot off the, yes, I'm interested in seeing, can the quote unquote old school veterans step up to the plate now that they have everything in front of them? Can the quote new school scopers who don't get respect from an entire demographic of fans step up to the plate and prove that they can catch them when it is not their wheelhouse? Can we see, unique scoping events at the Arkansas River. Can we make it play at the Arkansas River at all? Can we make it play at the Albemarle Sound? There's a lot of excitement, in my opinion, for this schedule, and that's why I said I think it's one of the most important yet. Everything is there, if properly covered, if these storylines play out, to keep our attention for the duration of the season.
And I think what's great about it is we're going to look back on this September 1st or so, and some of the things that we hope to happen will have happened. But there are also going to be 2 or 3 guys who we didn't mention in this whole hour who are going to be major players in the season. Either we just overlooked them or they came out of left field and did something that wasn't expected to be done. But that's what makes this sport great, right? That you watch an NFL game, 90% of the time you can pick who is going to win outright. You watch a tournament and you try to pick who's going to win, who's going to come in the top 10. Most of the time you're going to be wrong. And I think I'm, in this case, kind of proud to be wrong, because it's what keeps the sport interesting and why we can't predict everything at the beginning of the year.
Pick one biggest surprise breakout star of the 2026 Elite Series season.
Among the rookies, or just someone
among anybody, just anyone in that field, a breakout star, someone who maybe we didn't talk about, that wasn't in our radar, that isn't in the preview stuff, that at the end of the year we're going to be like, damn, that guy freaking killed it.
I think he doesn't get overlooked, but I don't think people realize the extent to which Kyle Patrick is the complete package. Assuming his health is in order this year, Kyle catches him. He's presumed to be a scoper. I think he can catch him other ways. More importantly, when having interviewed these guys for 20 years and watched their marketing efforts, you watch the guys who are good, the Palaniks, the Jacob Wheelers, the Van Dams, the Iconellis, the Swindles. Kyle Patrick has that off the water persona that complements the on the water skills. And I think, we talk all the time, Trey McKinney's going to win an Angler of the Year, Patrick Walters, et cetera, et cetera. No one's going to be surprised if they do. But I feel like Kyle Patrick, because he's so good off the water, sometimes his on the water talents get overlooked.
That's fair. You and Hannah have any trips coming up that anybody might be interested in jumping on if they're looking at out the window right now and it's -7 and they're like, I need to get to Guatemala?
Well, we're going to Guatemala on Valentine's Day. Isn't that how everyone spends Valentine's Day? Which means I will miss Martin. We had to organize that ahead of time and reserve it because it books up quickly. But we are going to Panama. I'm going to Panama for 3 weeks in May. We have Brazil trips next year. The Panama trip, we are taking some fishing industry insiders, including Skeet Reese and his wife. That was a Bass Fishing Hall of Fame prize. Yep. If people go on one trip in their life and they're bass anglers, I highly encourage them to do that. We're going to Alaska too, but the Panama tuna is just ridiculous. When they're eating a topwater, I think I've said this to you before, it's like running back into weigh-in with the winning bag in your live well when you're running to those tuna. Like, it's so heart-wrenching and exciting, and to see them blow up on a topwater, it made me remember what I like about fishing.
You can't fake those smiles.
No.
those are those.
I think in that particular smile, we were glad that it was done. We fought that 200-pounder for about 3 hours. We're always talking about, I want a 10-pound bass, I want a 12-pound bass. I hope never to catch a 200-pound tuna again. I really like those fun size, like 20 to 60 pounders. Those are the fun ones. The big ones are just a monumental pain.
And that's what it looks like on the water when you're that's what you're casting into.
Yes. Yeah. In fact, you see it on the radar. You see the birds diving 5 miles away, and the captain says, hold on. You hold on to the boat, you run, and there's just acres blowing up. And usually you get bit. If you don't, all of a sudden they're 3 miles away again. You hold on, you run 3 more miles, and by the end of the day, you are mentally exhausted as well as physically.
Even if you're not interested in an international trip, Pete and Hannah put up a lot of really good stuff like this one just recently, which went up today, is bass lures that are named after Gunnersville. Obviously, you've got, that type of stuff, but all sorts of the different lures, just all sorts of cool, different articles. You can learn more a little bit about the behind the scenes of some of the anglers, how you met your angler stuff, all sorts of international travel. You can contact them, you can talk to them about it, but just really cool in a day and age when it's hard to get people to go to websites. I still haven't updated the Bass Zone website. It says coming soon, and it's been saying that forever, like a revamp. You guys give me a reason to go to Half Past First Cast on a regular basis.
Thank you. We're bringing back the written word, just like Hackney's bringing back power fishing.
Okay. Do you have 5 minutes just to end the show on something scandalous?
I'm retired. I have as much time as you
want. I had Drew Gill on. And I was planning on talking about how he went on Gunnersville and his forward-facing sonar techniques and the minnow. I mean, it's a top 3 guy in the world. We're going to have a show later. You were on that show last year, top 10 live scopers in the world. But we took this hard right, and we ended up deep in the world of the future of AI in bass fishing. And it was intriguing. It was interesting. It was also terrifying. You are a writer. I have written thousands of art. My first article ever published is right up there. It's called Kill Switch Engaged. It also was in Bass West USA. But I also did something and spent a lot of time writing over the years, right?
Yeah.
But just like it is in fishing, the written word with AI scares the hell out of me. Does that scare you? Like, I mean, I could literally in 30 seconds, like, write an article in AI now as a guy who was a communications major with a mom who was an English major, who I grew up writing, and you're putting all this stuff together and you could read something and be like, okay, that guy's sentence structure, his use of words was intelligent. And I would almost feel guilty if I went in and used the what is that? The thesaurus that gave you like alternate words that meant the same thing. I'd be like, I don't know. Now, just like you could see in fishing, you could have guys that are in a certain part of the lake using a certain lure that they would have never been in had it not been for plugging it into AI. Where do you see the outdoor writing going in the future of this? Will there always be a niche for guys like you who sit down and hack out a 5 to 1,000 word article without just typing keywords in and say, write me an article about?
I think the bigger problem for me is the fact that people don't read anymore. If I ask my nephews and nieces, do you get any magazines? They look at me like I'm absolutely crazy. In the short term, it has benefited me because who is the last person to become an outdoor writer after you and me? Like all the Louis Stouts and Don Worths and Steve Prices of the world are retiring. There's you, there's me, there's...
the only one I could think of that came after me was like Luke Stoner.
Jody White, maybe.
Jody White, yeah.
I mean, those guys. So to me, I always compare it to being the last typewriter repairman on earth. There aren't that many typewriters out there anymore, but anyone who needs a typewriter repaired, in this case, writing, is coming to me. I think at least in the short term, they will still need writers to put together the experiential things to talk about, I'm riding in the truck with Trey McKinney and here's what he's talking about. AI can't do that yet, but I have to figure there's a time when no one will be reading and AI will be able to do more and more. And that's, I think, why Hannah and I are focusing so heavily on travel, because at least now AI can't host a trip in Panama or Brazil or Guatemala. So, I mean, you have to be prepared for the change, whether you like forward-facing sonar or not. It's changed fishing. Whether I like AI or not, it's changed writing. I still like to write every day. So I think for the foreseeable future, I'm going to do it because I like it, not because I need to make money at it. But if you want to become an outdoor writer as a career path, you might want to consider something else.
I like it. All right. Before we close it, we got to see the pup. Is that a possibility?
Oh, he's here. He's chewing on a Kong. Come here. Hey. Come here. He's here.
Aw.
12 and a half years old.
Aw. Looking better than ever.
Doesn't like me so much.
And then we know the story of the muskie. What's the story of the smallmouth behind you?
The smallmouth? So here's one for you. The smallmouth I caught with Keith Combs on a Strike King media trip. 6.40 ounce, 6.40 pounds. I caught it on a 2-inch rage swimmer. And the interesting thing to me, I mean, obviously it's a big smallmouth and it was really cool, but my biggest largemouth, my biggest smallmouth, and my biggest snakehead, I've caught in 3 different states with 3 different residents of Huntington, Texas. I caught my largest smallmouth with Combs. I caught my largest largemouth with Clark Ream in Texas when he was living in Huntington. And I caught my largest snakehead with my buddy Clifford, who lives in Huntington here on the Potomac. So I don't know if that's how random that is, but it's kind of a weird little factoid about me.
And then the sound, the woodburn sound thing that's behind your shoulder.
That is, my wife made that for me. She had people yell out half past first cast at, here's my QR scanner, at Lake El Salto one year. I don't know why it's not working. If you scan it, it says half past first cast. A bunch of people yelling that out.
That's very cool.
Yeah, no, I look around my office, the Bassmaster people profiled my office during COVID, and I see the residue of a life very well lived. I see a picture of me with Keith Combs in Alaska, Kevin Short in Michigan, Lonnie Stanley in Texas, Aaron Martins in Georgia. Like the fact that I now have more time and don't have a desk job I can get out there and chase more of these adventures is very exciting to me, because I have lived a good life. And I think I am proof that a regular guy with a regular job can go out and have fun in the fishing industry and do exceptional things. Even if you're not cool, you can do cool things.
I mean, now that you're retired, one of the cool things you need to do is you need to get your ass out to Clear Lake, Pete. Do you see what just went down? I've had 6 people text me this, the BBT results. Christopher Perez just won with 5 fish, 45.16 with a 13.07. Second place was 42.20. How'd you like to be Alec Pitts and Christian Burns, who roll in with a 10.95 and a 42.20 bag, and you lose by 3 pounds, and you lose Big Bass by 3 pounds too, because Kent and Christopher rolled in with a 13.07 and 45.16.
Yes. Clear Lake and Champlain are the 2 U.S. bass tournament fisheries I've never been to that I want to go to the most. And my buddy Kent Brown in California has been bothering me to come out for years, and I haven't had the time to make it work.
Now you got to do it.
So I'm going to make us. If Kent is listening, Kent, I'm coming out, and
you need to get him on the show.
He's awesome, and I hope after I get to know Skeet a little better in Panama that maybe I'll get a day on Clear Lake with Skeet too. That would be pretty special.
Phenomenal. Always enjoy our time together, your outlook and insight on things. You can catch Pete's work all week long next week on Lake Gunnersville for the Bassmaster Elite Series season premiere.
Thank you for the opportunity, Matthew.
See ya.
Bye.
All right. That was Pete Robbins. I did mention that Clear Lake stuff was absolutely nuts. It's interesting. We're seeing a lot of lakes that are peak, and then also at Clear Lake, they're catching a lot of 3-pound crappie out there too. CTL does return this next week. We have 2 days of filming scheduled. This week, we're doing something interesting. Zeke and I, if you've been following it, it's time to teach bass anglers how to crappie fish. This is a great time of the year. These suckers are out there. We're finally going. We kind of got delayed last week because, quite frankly, we couldn't even get out of the house. We had the most snow that there's been here in like 30 years in Oklahoma. But our next episode is breaking down a brand new body of water that neither of us has ever been to. We're going to start it when we get to the boat ramp, how we go through, how we find the fish, how we tackle the fish. And then the episode after that is everyone's favorite, catch, clean, and cook. So we're going to do Hooters buffalo wing crappie fillets. We're going to do Frenzy fish fry cactus crunch crappie fillets. And then we are actually going to do a smoked crappie on the half shell. So those are the next 2 CTLs coming up. A really good January for BTL. I cannot thank the viewers and the listeners enough for the interaction, for the feedback, for listening to the shows. You guys are what make this show so special. I've really talked a lot more about the comments, the questions that you guys have put in, the feedback that I've got. Really appreciate it. So we'll be back same time, same place tomorrow with another BTL, and then a big announcement on Wednesday. We have a special guest on Wednesday. We talked a little bit about it last year towards the end of the year. We revamped it. We made it completely simple. This is a cannot miss. I am exceptionally excited. This is something that everybody who listens to BTL can personally get involved with and do this spring. And we will officially unveil that on Wednesday. This has been another edition of BTL Bass Talk Live. We will talk to everyone later. See ya.